In 2023, I had the privilege of taking a business class through the SBA called Thrive, Emerging Leaders Reimagined. I'd like to tell you about the class and give it my honest review. In the midst of a very turbulent couple of years, my company was struggling. We were charging what I thought were exorbitant rates, but still not making any money. I was taking home just enough to cover my family's expenses, but not making any extra, and I had no room left to give raises to my employees. I received an email from SCORE, which is a business mentoring group through the SBA, about an upcoming program that would be starting soon. There were several prerequisites and credentials that you had to meet. Your business had to have annual revenues of at least $250,000. You have to have been in business for at least 3 years. And you have to have at least one full-time employee other than yourself. There were a few other things too, but that was the gist. I fulfilled all of those prerequisites, so I applied, not really knowing what I was getting myself into. At this point, I figured any education that could help me figure out how to save my business was worth doing. The application process itself was not difficult. I filled out and submitted a form, the form was approved, and moved into the interview phase, which I did online. From there, I was accepted into the program, which began in the middle of June 2023. My only complaint at this part of the process was the lack of clarity around the schedule. I had received a list of classes and events that was still in draft form. Most of the dates were not filled in except with a TBA, and many of the locations were not clear. Several classes were in person, but most everything was online. But I didn't know that yet. There was a more finalized schedule sent out eventually, but I missed that email and I did not see it until way later. So I started the class having no idea when things were going to happen or how it was supposed to work. I figured it out though, and that's what I want to share most about this class. The structure of it was quite brilliant, although the implementation could definitely have used some polishing. This course is a hybrid of in-person classes, pre-recorded online classes, and live Q&A sessions. There were 8 modules on several different topics, all important to running a business in today's world. This structure is probably my favorite thing about the class, simply because there was still an in-person component, which I much prefer when I'm in a structured learning environment. But the lessons themselves were online and on demand. And then there was a live Q&A each week. Those were led by the experts that led the pre-recorded modules. There was also a points system that brought an aspect of fun and gaming to the course, but I did not figure that out until the end of the second module, so I was already behind and too busy with business to really worry about it. So I didn't worry or care much about that part, but it was a cool feature if you're into those kinds of things, which I usually am, being overly competitive and whatnot. Oh, and the students were referred to as CEOs, because we are all business owners. I'm not entirely sure how I felt about that. It was a little weird being called a CEO when I was taking a class and considered myself a student. Also, I've never referred to myself as a CEO, only as a business owner or an entrepreneur. The group of student CEOs in each city or geographical area were referred to as a cohort, and we were each encouraged to create a team name for our cohort. We picked a really cool name, and it was so important to the program that I don't even remember what it was. So I'll talk a little about each type of class, along with my thoughts on it, then my opinion on the program as a whole, and how to apply if you're interested. Modules. The program was broken down into 8 main topics. Each topic was called a module. The topics covered were being an effective leader, which most discussed mindset and leadership style and things like that. Business planning and development, which talked a lot about time management. Module 3 was business financing and raising capital. This covered financial statements, like how to make them and how to read them, how businesses track expenses, as well as how to get loans. This was the module I was looking forward to the most because it's the issue I was struggling with. The 4th module was HR, hiring, and company culture, which was different aspects of managing people, like recruiting, retention, and payroll. Number 5 was marketing and building brand awareness, so ideas of how to advertise your business. Number 6 was driving sales, the bread and butter of all businesses, like how to sell. Module 7 was digital marketing and social media strategies. This covered how to use social media to market your business and increase brand awareness. Module 8 was legal compliance, intellectual property, and contracts. This was probably my favorite module overall because it covered patents and trademarks, which I have some knowledge of, but I want to know more about them. And it had the most information in it that was new to me. Online classes. The on-demand pre-recorded classes were each led by an expert on their topic. They were broken into 4 sections, and each section had 4 classes. Sometimes there was an interactive activity as well. Each class was fairly short, little bite-sized lesson on a particular topic. I think the longest ones were a little over 20 minutes. Most were between 10 and 15, and some were shorter than that. The experts that led the classes were high-quality people that really knew what they were talking about. There was no question that these people were experts in their fields. We had 2 to 3 weeks to complete each module, which seems like a lot of time given that each one is about 4 hours long, but everyone in this program is a busy business owner, manager, or leader, so it was really hard to fit in. I know I struggled to find the time to get through the online modules. One of the members of my cohort suggested that the modules should be released on Friday nights so that we would have the whole weekend to watch them rather than releasing them on midnight, Sunday night, Monday morning. I must say I agree to that assessment. Theoretically, we could simply watch it the following weekend, the way it is right now, but we would have already missed the first live Q&A on the topic, or we would be completely clueless about it. So I like the idea of releasing them on Friday, so Thrive leaders, please take note of that. And this might be a little overly judgmental, but I also felt that given the size, scope, and experience of the SBA, that the quality of the recordings was significantly lacking. These videos that I record in my little office on my cell phone have better picture, lighting, and sound than several of the pre-recorded classes in the program. It looked like most of them were recorded on Zoom by people that were not accustomed to using Zoom and had no tech support whatsoever. I'm not judging people that use Zoom. I have recorded several interview videos using the same software. I just found it very distracting because it seemed like nearly every speaker had some weird thing about their videos that made it hard to focus on what they were actually saying. And the live Q&A, called SME Office Hours. These were an amazing opportunity to get your questions answered about the material in the module. There was one almost every week, led by the experts that had done the pre-recorded classes. So the questions were real-time things that real business owners were dealing with. The answers were genuine and informative. Honestly, this was an excellent part of the structure of the program. The biggest problem I had with this part was that each office hours class was on a different day of the week and at a different time of the day. So even though I wrote them all into my calendar as soon as I got the confirmed schedule, I was never able to attend them simply because it was hard to make any kind of routine around them. Life kept happening and something would get in the way of attending these things. The worst one was scheduled for a Monday afternoon, mere hours after the module was released for us to watch. That was a little ridiculous. So how was anybody supposed to have any questions when the module was only available for a few hours? That only happened once, thankfully. Most of them were either later in the week or a couple of weeks after the module was released. That was my experience. I know many other CEOs were able to attend because there were a lot of people asking questions, and each one was recorded so you could watch them afterwards, but attending live is definitely better if you can manage it. In future years, I do hope that they put the office hours classes on the same days of the week so that a predictable routine could be built around them. In-person classes. This was by far my favorite aspect of this program, simply because I was able to meet and get to know the other people in my cohort. It was also the opportunity that I needed to ask questions about the program and figure out how these things worked. There was one in-person class towards the end of each module. The point of this was to wrap up and kind of complete the module, make sure everybody got their questions answered, and to do a few activities together. The final project. The culmination of all of the modules ended in a submission of a final project of sorts. We were to make a PowerPoint presentation about our company, what we learned, and what we will do with this information going forward. This was a very fun way to end the class since we got to see what everyone's big takeaways were. There was also quite a bit of homework during the modules. There was a workbook that you were supposed to fill out the questions and all that stuff, and we were told that doing this as we went through the modules would make our final project a lot easier. But I didn't even use that workbook for my final project, so I'm kind of glad that I slacked a bit and didn't spend a bunch of time filling that thing out because it didn't get used in the end. After completing the program, we received these nifty trophies and certificates in the mail, so now I have a nice thing to display on my shelf. My honest opinion about the program as a whole. This program was supposed to teach the equivalent of a master's degree in business. It was 6 months long and packed a lot of information into that time. But honestly, for all of the information that was covered, most of it was incredibly basic. In order to get into this class, you have to have been in business for at least 3 years, and even if you're like me and never took a business class beyond the most basic business math classes in college, you should have figured most of this stuff out by the end of 3 years. There were good takeaways and nice aha moments in each module, but I couldn't help but feel that the majority of the class time was spent reviewing things that a business owner should have already known. The module I was most looking forward to was the one on finance, because that was what I was struggling with the most. The entire first section was covering financial statements like your profit and loss and balance sheet. Forgive me for saying this out loud, but if you don't know what those documents are, then you have no business being in business. I know a lot of business owners don't keep up on their financial statements or they don't know how to use them fully, but at the very least, you should know what they are. When I started my business, I realized about a month in that I didn't know how I was supposed to keep financial records. So I Googled it. I watched a few YouTube videos and I learned how to make a P&L. It really isn't rocket science, but I did have one big takeaway out of that module, and that was projections. Projecting future profit or loss is a skill that I have never been able to figure out. It is not because I haven't tried, but I was always so far off the mark that it was a little embarrassing. The second section of the module took us through how to project future earnings, revenue, and expenses, and by extension, profits or losses. The theory is that you should be able to tell if and when you are going to run out of money several weeks before it happens. They also shared a spreadsheet with us, so I was able to take that and use it for my company. That one spreadsheet was worth the entire class. I would be lying if I said I never thought about dropping out. There were a lot of times when the whole program felt like a big waste of time or not really worth doing because it was so basic. But I'm really stubborn, and I tend to finish things that I start, so I stuck it out to the end. I did learn things in each module that I didn't know before, but most of those things were not earth-shattering revelations either. Personally, I think that one way Thrive could really improve the class is if they took the basic information and had it available for anyone that didn't know it, but then had the classes that were required to be watched be on a much more advanced subjects. So for that financial module, the introduction could simply say that this module is going to cover these things, but you need at least a basic working knowledge in financial statements. And if you don't know what these financial statements are, watch these classes first. That way, anyone that didn't know what they were or wanted to deepen their understanding before diving into the module could watch the basic stuff first. Overall, I still feel like it was worth doing. I really enjoyed the hybrid combination of pre-recorded and live sessions, and it was reassuring, if nothing else, to know that my knowledge of business does not have nearly as many gaps as I thought it did, given that I've never taken any complete college-level business courses. I have done a lot of classes outside of college, and I have made friends with many other business owners, so I think that's where most of my working knowledge has come from. There was a survey at the end of the course, and I was able to say all of this to whoever reads those surveys. I'm sure I'm not the only person who feels this way, so hopefully they will be able to take that feedback and improve it for the next class, which is now open for registration. If you are a business owner and you want to apply to take this program, the link is in the description below. So that's my thoughts on Thrive, Emerging Leaders Reimagined. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. If you have any questions, please leave a comment below. If you liked the video or it was valuable, please remember to hit the like button. And if you haven't already, please subscribe so you can get new gardening content in your video feed every week. Thanks so much, guys. See you in the garden.